for a draft of a play.
A draft of a play.
Hey y'all, Greg here. Before I get into the stated purpose of today's video, I've got some channel housekeeping stuff that I need to tackle. There's a list of timestamps in the video description below with links to each segment, so if you're here for more academic purposes than mundane, feel free to scroll down and jump ahead to whatever segment it is that you're looking for. Now that that's out of the way, let's jump into it, shall we? Wow, second episode in and already my YouTube channel is embroiled in scandal. Within minutes of releasing the first episode of this series last week, I received a number of complaints across multiple social media accounts, correcting a statement I'd made and demanding an apology. Not an apology to the critic, mind you, but to the art of musical theater itself. Those complaints may or may not have all been from a Mike S. No idea who that could be. Well, as we saw at the top of the video, my critics were correct, and therefore I do in fact owe them and musical theater at large an apology. So here goes. I sincerely apologize for the confusion and distress my carelessness has inflicted upon the community. The monstrosity is intended to be a musical, not a play. I am writing the libretto, not some commonplace script. These early drafts don't have music yet, but that's because once we have the story down, Mike is going to come in and interpolate it. Now, as penance for my transgression against Dionysus, Sondheim, Ethel Merman, the ghost of Jonathan Larson, and the rest of the musical theater pantheon, I shall submit myself to watching the new Cats movie unironically. Jesus Christ, I haven't seen that much cat butthole since Mr. Bailey last took a nap on my chest facing the wrong way. Right, now that that's all cleared up, here are a few updates on the reading. First off, I'm honored to say that some of the folks who were a part of the first draft reading have already reached out to me and asked to reprise their roles in reading the new draft next weekend. Joining us for the next reading will be Hannah Cairo as Claire. Claire is a deaconess of Sapientia, goddess of truth and wisdom. And also, J. Anthony McCarthy will be joining us as our narrator. Hannah is a recent graduate of my alma mater, Emerson College, and I had the pleasure of directing her and her classmates in their industry showcase last year. Her character, Claire, is someone who I haven't told you about yet, but we'll get to who she is and what she means to our intrepid monsters at some point. Tony is a longtime member of my company, Theater Unleashed. He's an incredibly talented actor and improv artist, and I've had the pleasure of sharing the stage with him a number of times. He's also one of my go-to fight choreographers. Most notably, he's done the fights for TU's critically acclaimed annual holiday production of A Very Die Hard Christmas. And yeah, that's actually a thing. It's awesome, and it will be back at some point. I recommend checking out some of Tony's work in Boris and the Bomb, now streaming for free on Tubi TV. In the meantime, we have almost 40 people confirmed for the reading next weekend. Now, granted, these are Facebook RSVPs, where a yes means maybe, a maybe means no, and a no means please leave me alone, Greg, I'm suffering from acute pandemic Zoom fatigue, which is completely legit. But, in spite of that, it looks like we're actually still going to have a good turnout, which brings me to my next topic. If you, yes you, would like to attend the reading and you aren't already connected to me on Facebook or any of the other social media platforms, I'll be happy to send you the link. All you need to do is go to my website, gregorycrafts.com, the link's in the description, hit contact on the main menu, it'll scroll you down to the mailing list widget, take 2 seconds to join my mailing list, and I'll send you the link. I promise it's not spam. Now, if that's a little too involved, then maybe consider joining me this Wednesday from 12 noon to 2 p.m. Pacific as I live stream here on YouTube for a couple of hours while I work on the script. I'm planning on sharing my screen so you can check out my notes and the script itself as I work. Now, I don't know if that's actually interesting to anybody, but I mean, if people like to watch other people play video games or watch live feeds of animal preserves, why not watch a writer, librettist, eat bacon and go stir crazy trying to make his scene work without adding to the page count? Worth a shot, right? Speaking of the script, work on the new draft continues. This past week, I reread the first draft of the libretto, which, yeah, it holds up. I also reviewed all of my notes from the previous reading, and I've started rewriting scenes. I am saving some work for the Wednesday live stream, but I am feeling pretty confident about getting all of this done in time for the 16th. I also took the time to review our source material and primary inspiration, Plato's Allegory of the Cave, which finally brings me to the main topic of this video. Okay, Allegory of the Cave. What is it? Why are we retelling it now? Why are we making it an epic fantasy adventure musical? And perhaps, most importantly, how are we going to do that? It's a lot to cover, so let's take it bit by bit. First off, the Allegory of the Cave was written by the Athenian philosopher Plato around 375 BC as a part of his Republic, a collection of Socratic dialogues concerning the concepts of justice, the order and character of the just city-state, and the just man. This is Plato's best-known, most influential work. Shout it out in the comments below if you had to read the Republic in college. Now, I consulted several resources in my research of the Allegory, but I think that the most accessible breakdown is by Amy Trumpeter on philosophizer.com. I'm going to include a link to her article down below in the description because I'm about to borrow from it quite liberally right now. I just think that they did the best job of breaking the allegory and its meaning down into plain English. So, here we go. Okay, in the Allegory of the Cave, Plato distinguishes between people who mistake sensory knowledge for the truth and people who really do see the truth itself. It goes like this. Imagine a cave in which there are 3 prisoners. The prisoners are tied to some rocks. Their arms and legs are bound, and their head is tied so that they cannot look at anything but the stone wall directly in front of them. These prisoners have been here since birth and have never seen outside of the cave. Behind the prisoners is a fire, and between them is a raised walkway. People outside the cave walk along this walkway carrying things on their heads, including animals, plants, wood, and stone. So, imagine that you are one of the prisoners. You can't look at anything behind or to the side of you. You must look at the wall in front of you. When people walk along the walkway, you can see shadows of the objects as they're cast onto the wall. If you had never seen the objects for real before, you would believe that the shadows of the objects were how these objects really were. Now, Plato suggests that the prisoners would begin a game of guessing which shadow would appear next. If one of the prisoners were to correctly guess, the others would praise him as clever and say that he were a master of nature. So one of the prisoners then escapes from their bindings and leaves the cave. He's shocked at the world he discovers outside the cave and does not believe it can be real. As he becomes used to his new surroundings, he recognizes that his former view of reality was wrong. He begins to understand his new world and sees that the sun is the source of life and goes on an intellectual journey where he discovers beauty and meaning. He sees that his former life and the guessing game they played is useless. The prisoner returns to the cave to inform the other prisoners of his findings. They don't believe him, and they threaten to kill him if he tries to set them free. Okay, let's go ahead and break this down. The Allegory of the Cave should not be taken at face value, but it's not hard to apply some critical thought and discern the deeper meaning. Let's take the cave itself. In Plato's theory, the cave represents people who believe that knowledge only comes from what we see and hear in the world. Empirical evidence. The cave shows that believers of empirical knowledge are trapped in a cave of misunderstanding. Now, the shadows represent the perceptions of those who believe empirical evidence ensures knowledge. Now, if you believe that what you see should be taken as truth, then you are merely seeing a shadow of the actual truth itself. In Plato's opinion, that makes you a plebe if you believe this. And now, a plebe is an insult for those who are not philosophers. The game represents how people believe that one person can be a master when they have knowledge of the empirical world. Plato is demonstrating that this master does not actually know any truth and is suggesting that it is ridiculous to admire somebody like that. The escaped prisoner represents the philosopher, who seeks knowledge outside of the cave and outside of their senses. The sun represents philosophical truth and knowledge. Now, the philosopher's journey into the light represents their journey in finding truth and wisdom. The other prisoner's reaction to the escapee returning represents that people are scared of knowing philosophical truths and do not trust philosophers. Hello, Mr. Bailey. Wow, not trusting philosophers. That has never gone badly for anybody before. When you line them up side by side, the allegory of the cave and epic fantasy actually have a lot of overlap. Instead of a cave, we have a dungeon. Instead of 3 prisoners chained to a floor, we have a pair of monsters assigned to guard a room. Instead of watching the shadows on the wall and trying to figure out what they are, the monsters tell tall tales of what the surface is like to pass the time between attacks by invaders from that very same surface. Those invaders themselves represent their own kind of distortion of perception, but I won't go into that right now because it relates to a plot twist and I'm not quite ready for spoilers. And of course, the exile from the cave. Depending on the translation you find, a plebe either escapes the cave or is cast out from it. For dramatic purposes, we're going with the latter, because it's harder to change the mind of someone who's committed to a particular ideology or way of thinking than someone who willingly seeks the new. But that's not all. In this story, every character is trapped in their own cave, and the events of the story will challenge their perceptions. Each character goes on a journey of enlightenment, not just bric and brac, and they are all changed at the end. Some for better, some for worse. Light, of course, is going to be used as a recurring symbol throughout. Oh, and the part where the newly minted philosopher returns to the cave to share enlightenment with his former fellows and is rejected and threatened with violence? Oh yeah, we've got that covered. Just wait. So, why a musical? Well, because the only way we can truly convey the emotional depth and resonance of a story this epic is through music. Characters in musicals sing when their emotions get so intense that their emotions just explode out of them in song. Whether they're pronouncing their determination, howling in agony, or falling hopelessly in love, they let the whole world know by singing it loudly. And that's just what we're going to do. Okay, I know that was a lot, but I am seriously hyped up for this, and now I hope you are too. If you made it this far, thank you again for sticking around. I hope you're going to join me again next week as we do our final prep for the reading, and then for the reading itself. If you haven't seen the first part of this series, you can click the card above, here I think, to go back and check it out. And if you enjoyed this video and are just as hyped for the script libretto as I am, take a second and smash that like button, then smash that subscribe button, and smash that little bell next to it so you know when the next episode drops. Until then, be well, wash your hands, wear a mask. I'll see you next time.